And welcome to another edition of the Nerdy Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Pettersen, alongside my brothers and fellow nerds, Josh and AJ. So I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure out a different way to hold my mic so I'm not bent over the table the whole time.
You look cool.
Is this working? Haley, is this working?
It works great.
Does this look okay? It looks natural? All right. Well, we're going to stick with it then.
I think it looks
We're going to
hilarious.
stick with it. Today, I don't know if hilarious is what we're going for.
You look great.
It's great.
Today, we're going to recap Q3 in the world of real estate and make some predictions for Q4 and beyond. We're also going to compare what Q3 looked like compared to Q3 of last year and some of the previous year, I believe. But before we get into that, the Would You Rather of the week, which I think is one of the best Would You Rathers of the week that we've seen because I came up with it myself yesterday. You are in a competition to win $1 million. The competition is that you have to perform this work equal or better than someone who does it for a living. So you're going to be doing it, and someone who does it for a living is going to be doing it.
Do they win $1 million
No,
if they win?
No, they're just there. But they don't want you to win. Yes, they win $1 million if they win because otherwise there's biases.
Oh, they're going to work hard.
Okay? So, and then judges will say, if you do it at least as good as them or better, you win the $1 million. Your two options. Would you rather have to tape off an entire 12 by 12 bedroom to prepare it for paint, or would you rather grout and caulk an entire bathroom floors and shower surround?
I'm going to try to cut a deal with the professional to take
Can't do that. Not an
$100,000
option.
and throw the competition.
This is how you know
What
it's a
kind of
good one.
floors are we talking about for this bedroom?
Hardwood.
Oh, and are we spraying the trim?
Yes.
Okay.
But you don't need to tape. I'm talking like
I'm taping
you're
it
taping
off.
off the floor and the windows. You don't have to tape, you know what I mean? Because they're going to spray the trim, and then they're going to tape the trim, and then they're going to roll it. Or they don't even need to tape the trim.
How good is the trim job? Like, is it perfectly square? Trims all the way to the floor, really nicely done.
I mean, it's a 1950s.
Okay.
I'm taping off. Taping off.
I would grout and caulk, I think.
Interesting. I don't know if I would be. I would.
Have you ever
probably-
grouted and caulked before, though, Josh?
No.
Have
Well,
you ever?
like,
have you ever seen
barely.
these guys tape jobs though? Do you know? Wait,
They're brilliant. I know.
I have a
what I'm doing.
secondary question for Josh just to see if he'd have any chance to win. What's the process when taping off a bedroom? Do you know?
You put tape on all of the spaces.
Nope.
Or
You
put
tape the
them-
corners, then you roll the paper, then you tape it
Then
again.
you tape again. It's the double tape that gets you. That's how I found out.
You dip the chip, you took a bite, and then you dipped
You tape
again.
along the trim on the hardwood floor around the whole thing, and then you put paper down, and then you tape it again
On top of the
That's how they
tape.
double it. I didn't know that until they taped off our house, and I went to remove it, and I was like, "Oh, that's genius! I never thought of that.
It's really good.
It's a cool idea."
Grouting and caulking is not that bad. You know what the trick is to caulking?
I don't know,
You know the
man.
trick?
Your grout lines are going to be so much thicker than the. They're
No,
not
they
gonna
won't.
Be as good.
I
There's
use
no
a
way.
wet sponge. I learned you dip the sponge in the toilet.
You're
Greg taught me that.
No,
but
he
when
didn't.
when you
In the toilet.
yeah, he dipped it in the toilet
didn't
and
know
he
that.
caulked around the tub. You know what caulking? The magic trick is. You know what it is? You've probably tried the tool. You've probably tried your finger. You've probably tried a spoon.
Baby wipes.
Baby wipes are the trick.
Interesting.
You put your pointer finger around a baby wipe and you wipe it off, and it gives you a perfect line every time.
I'm less concerned about your ability to caulk it. I don't think you'd grout as good as them.
I've grouted plenty of times. 2705 Zenwood. Look at the basement bathroom. That's me.
Just because you've grouted before doesn't mean you're good enough. to
How
go
about we
against
do
it.
the actual
Should
topic
we move
today?
into what
Let's
matters?
do that.
I
Great at
love that.
grout.
I love that. Would you rather of the week? That's what we're
It's
getting.
phenomenal.
Okay, so you could just fast forward into 2 minutes and 37 seconds if you wanted to get to what actually matters. So we're going to start with the interest rates as far as Q3 compared to the past. Let the people know what that's looked like.
So you're looking at interest rates and the Fed fund rates, or which one are you preferring here? You want the Fed fund
Both.
rate first? All right,
Both.
let's do the Fed funds rate. So right now, we've talked about this one a lot. We're at 5%, 5.5% right now, which is up from 3.25% the same time last year. So pretty significant jump that we've seen there. As is everyone's very aware of the reality of kind of what the Fed is doing. There's a possibility for another quarter point increase. That's kind of going back and forth right now, so we should know in the near future kind of where that ends up going. Interest rates have continued to run up as this has run up. We're at about 8, a little over 8 right now is what I've seen mostly, versus 7.1% last year, which actually, it's kind of wild to think about that we were over 7% a year ago. So we've essentially held rates around 7 or over 7 for a full year now.
I just want to point this out here because when the Fed started raising the overnight rate, the first podcast we came out with was, guys, the Fed doesn't raise the mortgage rates, right? And you're saying that a year ago it was 3.25 on the overnight and rates were like 7.1.
Mm-hmm.
and they've went up to 5.5 on the overnight, but rates have only went up to roughly 8.
Yeah, because of all of the essentially baked-in expectations on what was going to happen with the Fed. The Fed had signaled pretty strongly they were going to at least 5, so essentially the mortgage rates started baking in that reality early.
And the Fed controls the mortgage rates only through the bond market, not through the Fed funds rate. So when they're buying bonds, they can artificially lower the rate. When they're selling bonds, they can artificially raise the rate. And right now they're selling bonds.
To raise the
Which
rate.
is, well, they're not raising the rate, but they know that the behavior they're having will likely impact.
They're
10-year
basically
Treasury, which
like
will likely impact this.
Basically like Elon Musk, if he was allowed, could sell all of his Tesla stock and the price would absolutely crater in the same way, right? They control so much of the market. And they
Right.
Sounds
so
like
much.
a bad decision for Elon Musk.
It would be he can't do that. It's illegal.
And then also the thing to think about with the interest rates is 7.1% last year. So we have actually had more stabilization. We've talked about we really wanted stabilization, but it's been stabilization with a slight increase up over time. So the fact that it continues to jump is something that continues to worry buyers. In 2021, that rate was 3.3%. So we've more than doubled interest rates in 2 years, which is pretty wild to think about, but it also explains a lot of what we've seen in terms of the market.
I feel like it actually does show some glimmer of hope to buyers in the sense that they stopped going up at such a drastic rate, like you had said. Because they doubled, and that was like, oh, that's really bad for buyers. But from 7.1 to 8, it's less over a 12-month period isn't as crazy.
Less
in my
dramatic.
opinion.
It's just
Yeah,
the fact
less
that
dramatic.
it was already high at 7.1 to the point where they were concerned, and the fact that it has showed no signs of slowing on the upside, I think it's continued to make people just really skittish.
Talk about pending sales in that time. So rates obviously rose pretty quickly. What have the pending sales looked like the last couple of years?
Down about 10% in October versus last year. I think that's a national number, though, isn't it, or no?
No, that's our local number.
Okay.
Yep, it was just under 10%. So, I mean, that's something where we've talked about throughout the year. Our pendings have been down more than 10%. So actually now we're kind of starting to lap that big interest rate rise.
Oh, is that monthly versus monthly?
It's
October.
this
Got it,
versus last year.
Not a 12-month trail.
No.
Correct.
So we've seen annually was like around 30 in the early part of the year when we started lapping the 3.3 to the 7, like that big jump. So to your point, Luke, the interest rate rise really slowed pendings. But now that interest rates have been more stable, pendings have stayed a little more stable. So they're at like all-time lows, but they're more stably
Homes
low.
available is the same way.
Yep.
So wait, do we know what the number was in 2021?
I can try to
Comparatively?
pull that up if you'd like me to.
I'm just curious what that would look like because it'd be nice to see the 3% to the 7 to the 8.
I bet it's down
Combination.
40%.
think it's 40.
From where it was.
AJ's guess is 40. While he's pulling that up, AJ, can you tell us about the homes available in the inventory in the market?
Yeah, so like 8,800 homes available in the metro area, which is up a little bit from September. This does happen. We tend to have increased inventory at different times of year. It is like it's down 7.5 from last year, and I think it's the lowest number of homes available on the market in trackable history on our system. So it's the least number of homes we've ever had at the end of September since 2004.
Wow.
Maybe there was a time when there was less, but right now it's been since 2004. And keep in mind that the fact that there's less homes available in the future, right? So like if you look at 2004, think how many homes were built between 2004 and today. There are way more homes in the market.
Existence.
Yeah. And way less available.
Oh, which is wild.
yeah.
So I just
That
did
is
look
wild.
the pending sales. So we're down like 35 to 40%. So I'm looking at a
That's
running
fine,
graph,
yeah.
but like that's roughly
That's
the range, which is what
about
we've
what it
been
is, right?
saying for a period of time.
2020 is probably 50%.
From 2020, the peaks in 2020 were around like this time of year. It starts going down, but we're probably 1,400 sales in the metro, and it's at 762 right now.
Yeah, half.
So it's gone down precipitously. Now, I think it's important to say if we looked into the future, now that we've seen that trend line, it's really low. It's starting to kind of stabilize, though. So we probably will see a more similar, trend in terms of home sales per month in 2024 to what we saw in 2023.
You know what I'd be curious about? As rates do at some point, I guess, go down, you would think. If they get to, let's
in
say, like
2047,
7%.
when
Yeah,
they get
yeah.
to 0.5.
If they get to 7% and we see like let's say July of 2023, they were 7.25%, let's say roughly, or 7.5%. And then if they in July of 2024 are about the exact same rate, I'd be so curious to compare pending sales between the July of 2023 and the July of 2024 to see if it's literally a direct, like, hey, they were 7.5%, they're 7.5%, the same amount of sales happened. It'd be a wild comparison.
It
to see if
probably
that-
will track roughly there.
About that,
You
yeah.
would think there's going to be some, impacts from, let's say, like builders are slowing their activity now
You can't
because the
control
market's
that.
gone slower, and so they're behind versus ahead because of their cycles. But I would think that, if rates stabilize, it would probably be pretty similar behavior. You might see actually a slight uptick just because people will grow more accepting of their reality by that
because
point.
the rate had went down from a higher number versus go up from a lower number. That makes
Exactly.
sense. What if prices looked like?
Up 2.4% in September. They're flattening out, but that's a September versus September number too. So just for the people listening, we can track this on a monthly basis, a 3-month basis, a 6-month basis, or a 12-month basis, which would mean, if we did a 12-month trail, we'd be comparing the median of the last 12 months versus the median of the 12 months prior to that, and so on and so forth. For cases like this, it is easier just to say, what was this September's median price versus last September's median price?
It's probably better, too, because we do see pricing fluctuate by time of year, and having more consistency in the time of year actually probably gives you a more accurate representation of the market.
And I do think the one thing I talk about often, I think people get confused with, and like we said, we've run these numbers before, but what price brackets are homes actually selling in? Because the prices being up 2.4 doesn't necessarily mean the values across the metro are up by 2.4. It just means of the homes that are selling, the prices are up by 2.4. I would say if you had like a real adjusted index, it's probably greater than that because homes in the upper brackets are not selling as quickly or for as much as they once were.
That's a good question.
And first-time buyers are really have the leverage right now because they're comparing renting to buying and not selling and buying.
I bet on InfoSparks we could do a price point
We've
of
done
0
done
to
this before.
450K.
Yeah, so I think one fallacy that we've seen in the market is that, well, if you bought a house in June and you sold it in December, you would lose money, right? That's the general belief in Minnesota because we have the seasonal realities here. In some cases, that's true. But when we did the breakdown, we actually just looked at the bucketing of different brackets. So like 0 to 300, how our price points June versus December, 300 to 500, how our price points June versus December, 500 plus. Because if there are more $1 million houses selling in the summer, that's naturally going to inflate the
It's
price
going
points.
to affect the median.
Right. So what we've seen when we've done that analysis is actually what we're seeing is the higher priced houses tend to sell during the warmer months. And then the lower priced houses tend to sell during the colder months. So it's not necessarily that your house loses value as the market gets colder, which maybe in this year it's true because of the way the interest rates are affecting things, et cetera. But it's more so just the mix of houses that are going on in different times of year. And that's another reason why it's important to look at pricing at similar times of year because you might be able to filter out that noise.
It's quite a brain melt, though. Brain meld, what do you call that? Like, it's just a weird thing to
it
think
messes
about.
with your brain a little bit.
It's not, prices don't dictate the values necessarily.
Yep.
Because if no homes are being sold, then prices would look like they're flat.
You'd actually probably be better off looking at days on market in that specific price pointed bucket.
And seeing how
Because-
they're moving.
Yeah,
If you wanna
'cause
know
if
how competitive
in
it's
July
gonna be.
it was 5, and then in November it's 12, you could then probably make some sort of back end comparison that at
Totally.
12 days you're more likely to get 3% less than at 5 days or something like that.
Yeah. When it comes to pricing, what I would say is it seems like, I mean, we as agents, I shouldn't say we, but agents in general tend to be really good at trying to find ways to say it's a good time to buy a house, it's a good time to sell a house, right? The one thing people are saying right now that I actually think does make sense and works is if you're buying a house right now at a higher interest rate, the buyer pool, specifically when you layer in the fact that we've seen buyer pool thinning as we gotten in the winter and with the bad interest rates, if you feel comfortable with your payment now and you can lock it in, there's actually more signs that the pricing will come up as interest rates go down because a lot of buyers are passing at the moment, but they still want to buy a house. They just don't feel comfortable buying in this environment. And so if you buy now, you lock in price, and then theoretically, if the rates do fall, then you're able to refi out to a lower rate, but you're not then going to compete with as many buyers when the market does inevitably come back in that scenario.
And I think what will be interesting is tomorrow the new numbers will come out because I know we're dropping this in November, but today is Halloween, so we're going to see new numbers for October, and following month supply is going to be really interesting because it's up. The lowest it ever got, I think, was in 2020 at like 0.9 months, and it's 2.4, I want to say, or it was in September. But I would venture to guess it's going to be in the high 2s, probably when October comes out. So you're seeing, demand slipping at the same time as you're seeing way less homes on the market, which is a really interesting marketplace.
And I would say it's funny because my general gist would be it's not a good time to be a buyer or a good time to be a seller right now in the market, right? If you had to think about it. But if you're a buyer, I think, and you want to be a buyer at some point in the next 3 years, it's not likely going to get better. So it's going to continue to be a bad time to be a buyer for the next 3 years anyways. So if you want to buy, now is actually an okay time to get in.
I would say, yeah, if you're comfortable with a monthly payment and you're deciding between renting and buying. The big thing I tell people is think about what the lifestyle is. So like if you love your downtown apartment because it's close to everything and you can walk to restaurants and do all that and the payment works, I mean, sure. But if you want a single family house with a yard and your own place that nobody else can tell you what to do, then maybe it makes sense to buy. The other thing I was going to say was going last year in Q4, the rates were the 7, right? And I personally was telling my buyers saying, hey, everybody's saying hop in now. It's going to be competitive. I'm kind of thinking if we go into Q1 of 2023 and the rates are still 7.5.
2024.
No. Last year.
Oh, okay.
I was telling people last year, if we go into Q1 and rates are still 7.5, there's no way it's going to be competitive and chaotic, right?
That's when everyone comes back.
And that's what happened. So if rates are 8 now in Q4 and Q1 comes around and rates are 7 3/4 or 8, historic numbers would tell you that buyers will still be coming out in droves. Obviously, prices have went up. That could affect
It's the lease impact, right? So if you have a summer lease and you're a first-time home buyer and you have to evaluate, am I going to really lease again? They tend to say, well, I'll wait until January and then I'll see what's out there. Yeah. And that's when it tends to go like, where did everyone come from? Mm-hmm. But I do anticipate, even with the market slowing with the rates being higher, I think January will be a lot busier than November and December.
But what are they going to buy? There's going to be like 6,000 homes on the market.
That's the thing. The inventory is not going to. But there were homes available for them to buy at 7.5 when rates were 7.5 at the beginning of 2023.
I think right now it's just really stagnant. And in January, the buyers will continue to try to gobble up what's left. And if it's not good, they won't gobble. But they're going to come back and look, I think, come January.
They're going to look. So if you want to talk to your buyers about that right now that are on the fence, remind them of what happened last year. It could be something where it actually ends up being beneficial for them.
6,100 homes for sale last January.
And what are we at right now?
8,900.
It would be good to look at, too, like what it is by price bracket. Because the price bracket that's going to be competitive in January is going to be the like 350, 400.
What was it in October? And
what's crazy, though, is like every year it gets pretty low. Like it honestly bottomed out less last year than it did in the previous 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense.
So, because homes sat a little bit longer.
Yeah. I mean, there are good houses right now. I mean, there are actually, you go to tour houses, I see stuff that's on for, I was out. There's stuff on for 20, 30 days this last weekend. Yep. That was actually good. So there's more out there right now than people think, but it's just the buyer pool is thinned out and the rates just make the payments so challenging for them.
So we have one more I want to run through here. And if you have these numbers, I'm not sure. I want to know what the agents nationally are looking like. How many have fallen off if we can track that?
There's 1.6 million is kind of the number that most people work off of. And that's Realtors. So that's National Association of Realtors. It's the only one you can really track, I think. I mean, I'm sure they have a number that people that aren't part of the association as well.
They'd have to conglomerate all of the numbers.
And they said
from
roughly
all the local
2 million if you count everybody.
2 million total. You got to imagine you're going to lose 25%.
Yeah, they don't have released yet because we probably aren't quite to the point where like license renewals have fallen off and new ones and how they kind of put it together. They'll probably release that at the end of the year. But yeah, I think a minimum of a quarter this year.
Is that what people are saying, or that's what we're thinking?
That's a hunch.
That's what we've
just a hunch.
We haven't heard anything.
It's hard to imagine people feeling like this career is going to be successful when you lose 30% of the sales in the marketplace. You would think 30% of the agents probably fall off from that.
And we probably added 30% agents when 2020 happened.
Right. It wouldn't be shocking to see half of the agents disappear in the next 2 years. I mean, that's a little catastrophic sounding, but the reality is like there's only so much volume to go around, and if the rates don't come down, the volume's not going to spike back up.
4 million sales. They're saying it probably will end up being around 3.9 for 2023. That's like the prediction. So if you think about 2 million agents, 3.9 million sales, 2 sides per sale, 7.8.
4 per person.
Just under 4 sales per person. That's not a very good career for the average agent.
Well, that is the average amount of sales a year that a real estate agent has, isn't it? It's 4 to 6.
It is a 4 to 6, but when it's
that 2 is a big impact, though. If you were doing 6 and now you do 4,
that's a big deal.
30% less income, and usually like we've seen at the height, and I think 2021 was like 7 million sales. So you think about the difference there. 7 million gets you to 14 million sides with 2 million agents even, and there were probably less then, to be honest. But 2 million is 7 sales, so it's 7 versus 4 for the average agent. So there's like as many doing less as there are doing more.
We also
probably.
can't calculate the fact that when market gets tough for clients are a little bit more picky about who they're going to choose to work with.
And as technology plays more of a role into it, more of the sales consolidate into bigger teams and bigger places because of where the actual clients are coming from. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, it sounds catastrophic, but the reality is it's not that crazy to think that we would see a huge drop in real estate.
Just before we finish this off, and because we are talking about agents, if you are listening to this and you are an agent and you've seen success in the past when sales were up and it was going well, and sales have dropped and rates have went up, and you feel like the sky is falling and it's not going very well, the Advisory Realty Group, led by AJ Pettersen as well as a few other agents, are adding agents rapidly, and we need more agents, and we're looking for more agents. So if you wanted to grab coffee, come to a team meeting. We have one right after this. Reach out, DM us. You know how to find us. Our socials are everywhere.
We just
plug.
passed sides for last year, and there's still about a month left for 2023. So
what are we at right now?
It's pretty cool to think that we're going to be up 10% probably
about
year.
10%. Yeah, we're at 362 sales today.
So to think that we're up 10% when the market's down 30 was. I mean, it's funny when people ask me about how's real estate going. It must be bad for you. I'm like, well, my volume's about flat to last year, and our team is up 10%. So
it's a mixed bag.
We've had to work a little harder to get there, but the reality is the systems seem to be working to keep the growth happening even when things are bad. So that's been really, I think, reassuring for the reality of what we're dealing with here.
Completely agree. Well, I think that's all we have this week on the Q3 market recap. We will be doing this each quarter compared to the year prior and possibly 2 years prior as we move forward here. So if you guys ever need anything, of course, like I had said, reach out. And remember, as always, be better.